minute. Natalia is going to let me know when we're live, and then I will get us started.
Introductions in seniority order. Tom goes first.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This is T-SPAN, our debate of the Teamster convention, Teamster election. The first debate was just tonight between Sean O'Brien and Steve Verma. So we're going to have a panel tonight of three distinguished Teamster leaders talking about their impressions of what happened and what to make of it all. So we have Richard Hooker, the Secretary Treasurer of Teamsters Local 623 in Philadelphia. Hooker is the first African-American to lead the local in 100 years. Then we have Tom Leadham, the retired former president of Teamsters Local 206 in Portland, Oregon. Tom was the warehouse director under the late General President Ron Carey, and he ran against James P. Hoffa 3 times. And finally, there's Tim Sylvester, a retired UPS Teamster. He was formerly the president of Teamsters Local 804 in New York. He led the campaign to rehire the Mazpath 250. And in 2016, he ran for General Secretary Treasurer along with Fred Zuckerman on the Teamsters United slate. My name is Andy Sernatinger. I'm a Teamster in Local 695 in Madison, Wisconsin. My co-host is going to be Joe Allen. Joe, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Hi, Joe Allen. I was in the Teamsters here in Chicago for a number of years and in Boston. I've written a book called The Package King, or History of UPS, and I write pretty frequently about the Teamsters in the logistics industry.
And this panel is sponsored by Tempest Magazine at www.tempestmag.org. And we're going to run for roughly an hour, give or take, depending on how the conversation goes. So first, Joe's going to give a quick recap of what actually just happened at the debate, and then we'll start the discussion.
Thanks, Andy. I just maybe want to mention first that there is currently a Teamster strike in Chicago against Sysco Foods, one of a group of people who last year were declared essential workers and now are on the picket line demanding a decent contract. And we want to acknowledge the strike, express our support. And if you're in the Chicago area, stop by the picket line and support the strikers against Sysco Foods. It's a good cause, and I'm sure there'll be many other strikes like that in the coming year. Tonight's debate was, of course, part of the official program of the Teamsters Convention. There's a minimum of one organized debate. There's actually going to be 3 this year, 2 presidential ones and 1 general secretary debate. That's unusual and different, and that's a good thing. There actually has been something of a debate about debates this year. The fact that Richard Hooker, who's one of our panelists tonight, called for more debates was a good one, but was also greeted with a lot of scorn and condescension by many other people who for some reason didn't want to have more debates, particularly ones in local unions. So at least we have 3 this time around. I think there's a couple of things to be said. I thought in many ways the questions asked this time around by the reporters who from the National Press Club were in some ways a lot better and more wide-ranging than I've seen in previous debates. What I mean by that is they took up a lot of broader questions that impact the Teamsters, but were not necessarily about the Teamsters. So, for example, the discussion at the beginning was about the whole issue of vaccinations in the workplace. It went very quickly to discussions of issues of race and racism, both in the union and outside the union, and what role the Teamsters will play in combating these things. There was a long discussion of the question of diversity. What does it mean? Is it just questions of appointing the right people, or is it a deeper issue of how to get more people involved in the union? Steve Verma probably made one big slip tonight during his comments on that. That's probably for other people to judge, but it appeared to be so. I thought the diversity of questions and the broad range represents, I think, probably what's going on with many unions right now, particularly about the question of Black Lives Matter, the role of a changing workforce in the labor movement, and all of these things, I think, made for potentially a better debate. And I think that sometimes both candidates were forced to address things that they probably wish they didn't have to, at least from their demeanor. But I don't think we got the answers that we really wanted around those, and particularly those that are particular to the Teamsters Union, such as how do you organize Amazon? When one of the panelists asked, well, what would you do differently that's been done by other unions? You really got kind of vague, platitudes about the need to have a better plan. In fact, Steve Bammer implied that he had a secret plan to organize Amazon. So I think that, there was a potential for a much deeper discussion of the issues than we got tonight. We got a little preview of the tension between the two slates, but probably not enough. And I think I'd really love to hear what some of the folks on the panel have to say about this, as people who are veteran campaigners who've campaigned for these positions, and people who are, particularly Richard, who along with Chris Silvera have been trying to discuss the issue, particularly of race in the Teamsters, on a number of live Facebook dialogues that they've had for a number of months now. So I'll just kind of end it there, and please take it away.
Well, if I may, first of all, I'd like to, thank Joe, Andy for inviting me. I think this is worthwhile to debrief an important event like this in the union. But let me push back a bit, Joe, on your comments. I was a little disappointed, in fact, of the questions that were posed. I felt that questions from Teamster members might be more on target, and we get to know more about what they're thinking, and what's important to them in this coming election. I think also perhaps the two candidates both might have been a little bit surprised by some of the discussion about, vaccination and so forth. I think they expected something more in line with union issues and the things that we're dealing with in the union. So I actually liked the idea that, I don't know Richard Hooker, but Richard, I recognize that you set up a debate, and I thought that was a pretty good idea, actually. There's nothing that precludes candidates from going into a local union, anywhere in a local union, face the members. I mean, that to me is what it's all about. So I thought that was an excellent idea. I think more of those kind of debates involving Teamster members asking the tough questions that really affect them and their families and their jobs. I just think that's more germane to the election itself.
Well, Richard, I was waiting for you to respond to that. I agree with Tom. I thought it was a great idea. And when you proposed it to me, I told you I'd be there regardless. And I offered to moderate the thing, and you accepted that. And you had me as a co-moderator. And I was there on the 4th of July. And it was disappointing that it didn't take hold and actually happen. But Steve Verma showed up, as several of his slate members did, and the other slate chose not to, which is, was their choice. But it was the first time that I ever spoke to Steve Verma. I had never met him. He said he had met me at a panel, but I don't recall. And it was interesting to hear him speak. I thought he spoke pretty well that day. Richard, what was your take? It was your event.
Well, again, I was kind of disappointed that, the odd slate, didn't, take the opportunity to come out and talk to the membership, because like Mr. Leadham said, this is what this is about. It's about the members. It's not about anybody running for office. It's not about anybody in office. It's not about me. It's about the members. So when someone calls, I think the best thing to do, especially in an election like this, when, everything is changing, the culture is changing, society is changing. Our members are getting younger, and, we need to take every chance we can to engage them. It doesn't matter if you are, on the power slate, a support of the power slate, on the odd slate, a support of the odd slate. This is about the members. And I think they failed to an opportunity to really put it out there. It's one thing to talk about it, say, yeah, we're about the members, but this was a opportune time to show that it's about the members. Put differences aside, answer those tough questions, because in our local 623, we have a lot of questions for both sides, and only one side decided to show up. That says a lot. And this debate tonight, I thought it was a good debate. We were talking about it, amongst ourselves. Mr. O'Brien, on this chance and all those kinds of things.
Richard, we're kind of losing you there.
Can you hear me? Hello?
All right,
Hello?
try. Yeah, that's better.
Okay, yeah, I thought that Mr. Verma was consistent. I thought that, O'Brien, he's the bully on the block. When questions that were, easy for him to answer, he pumped his chest. But the one thing that did hurt Mr. Verma was the whole token. That token term came back and got him a little bit, But there were some things that I kind of wish that he would really went after O'Brien on, especially when Mr. O'Brien kept talking about, you didn't do anything, why you didn't see anything back then. And every time he said that, my mind always went back to 2013 and how he supported Hoffa all these years. And, he even said that he knew that Hoffa was an absentee landlord. And my question would have been to Mr. O'Brien, the same thing he asked Mr. Verma, is what were you doing? You were doing the same thing. So, but again, I'm not up there to debate, and that's for Mr. Verma. And I just wish that he would have really called him out on that a lot more.
I mean, if I might, general impressions of the debate, right? I mean, as a, just a regular Teamster right now, it looked like it could have been something on C-SPAN or something like that. It was way more formal than, the kind of debate that I kind of would, hope for, right? You want to hear some candid conversation about which direction you're going to take the union. They actually agreed on like half the things that were brought up. There was about 17, 18 questions that they asked. Most of the time they agreed. It was just when they started going over each other's records when it got real hot. But I'll say one thing that I thought was really interesting, which is that when they were questioning O'Brien's record about the Top Chef incident, I know Verma didn't even mention that the secretary treasurer of Local 25 pled guilty in that case, right? I mean, that they fully expected that they were going to get hung for that one. So.
Well, just general statements about the debate itself. I thought that Verma, started out, he was nervous. It was obvious he was nervous. I thought he started out weak, frankly. I thought O'Brien started out very strong. Over the debate, I think when started talking about issues and getting into specifics, I thought Verma stepped up. I thought he recovered. And I think all in all, it was fairly even by the end. It was fairly balanced. There were really no fireworks like we've seen in previous Teamster debates. Certainly, I remember them that way, some of them. There weren't any knockout blows or anything like that. There was nothing, I think, that's going to convince people to change their mind if they felt that they'd made a decision already on who they were going to vote for. I think there was a lot of agreement, but I think the agreement starts to slip away when you start to talk about details. And I thought there was maybe 2 or 3 major areas of discussion here. One was on diversity, which I thought was very worthwhile. Building a diverse slate. The notion that in order to organize at places like Amazon, the leadership it has to look like the people that you're trying to organize. I think that is something that was talked about. I'm not sure that they've put that into practice as they built their slates. I think Verma has certainly done that. I think he's got clearly a more diverse slate. I think that's a big plus. And I think that just the discussion of the need for diversity and how it limits us in our ability to organize was really important. And then the other thing too was about Amazon, and just no details whatsoever about Amazon. And the first thing that I would think about hearing both parties want to organize Amazon, I don't recall a dues increase at this convention. And most of the money at the IBT now is going to salaries. So in order to organize Amazon, some people are going to have to make some sacrifices at the international, because this is a huge corporation. It is not going to be organized by one person that they direct, that they appoint as director of a division. There was no discussion of what resources, what money is going to go into that division, what kind of staffing. We're talking about a company that in this small state alone employs more than 15,000 workers. So no details on Amazon, which is really the big challenge facing the union in terms of the need to organize and protect our existing agreements in package delivery, but well beyond that. And just very few details at all, and no discussion of resources, no discussion of reallocation of resources. And those are the things that are going to matter. Making an announcement a few days before the convention, it gave a lot of hope to a lot of Amazon workers, but I'm really wondering if there's any follow through on either of these slates.
I'd like to comment on that. Joe, you talked about the variety of questions they asked, and I kind of thought they were softball questions. Vaccinations are good. Imposing them without a mandatory bargaining is bad. Yes, we should organize Amazon. Yeah, we'd all agree with that. As Tom said, they agreed on more than they disagreed upon. But what Tom was just talking about, I was an organizer on the overnight campaign, which is minuscule compared to Amazon. And we had a staff of 45, 50 people working all over the country. Not to just throw out numbers, but you're talking about, you would need hundreds of organizers. You'd need locals to agree to work with the international. You'd need to build a coalition. And the resources that would be needed are phenomenal. We couldn't afford to organize FedEx, beside the fact that they're under the Railway Labor Act, but we would have had to consider working with some other unions to do that. And as I said, let's go organize Amazon. Let's rally around that. We're going to organize them. Okay, pump everybody up. Where's the plan? Where's the money coming from? You're going to hire organizers. You're going to fund people's travel. It's just, it's kind of an easy answer, So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like you said, where's the plan at? And you guys have been doing this probably longer than I've even been alive. So when you talk about resources and all those kinds of things, where's the money going to come from? Like you said, I mean, are they the dues go to that level, the IBT level? They pay for the salaries, the multiple salaries and pensions that these guys have. So where's the money going to come from? Who's going to make those sacrifices? Who's going to make those tough calls? And like you said, there was no specific plan on how they're planning on doing it. But I'm gonna tell you something. I was shocked at the amount of racial and diversity questions that were being asked, and you could tell it was some uncomfortability to Mr. O'Brien, especially when he said Black Lives Matter. Man, I think when people say that, they say it because it's popular and it sounds good, and with this social justice movement, what happened with George Floyd, everybody want to get on board saying that.
We lost you again, Richard.
What are you going to do? What are you going to allocate to that movement? Hello? Hello? Can you hear me?
You're back.
We got you, Richard.
So I was like I said, I was definitely shocked to hear them say that. But when people say that, especially in the union, Black Lives Matter, I don't even think they know what that means because it's more than just a slogan, and it's some. I think when they say it, they don't know what it means. It sounds good. Let me say it because I know that the Teamsters organization is younger, more African Americans, more minorities, more women, progressive. It sounds good, but what are they going to do to make sure that Black lives truly matter? Or are they going to, educate the totality of the membership to know what that really means? Especially when it comes to leadership. You got about 400 locals, but you only got about 22 African American principal officers. But when you look at the landscape of the workforce, 65-70% are minorities, and that's not reflected. It's not even reflected in a lot of the top guys that's running for office. I don't think Sean O'Brien has a minority person on his board. I don't think Fred has a minority on his board. Now I know Mr. Herrera and Mr. Verma do, and that's why when they talk about diversity, it's more appealing because they do it at the house before they start talking about it abroad. And to me, I was very, very shocked at how many questions were focused on diversity and social justice.
Can I jump in for a second on some stuff there?
Please.
Well, a couple of things. One is that, I wanted to know what people thought about this, is that, the Verma slate is pretty clearly running, well, would you call it a kind of a resentment against the attention that the UPS division gets, or how would you frame it? There seems to be this kind of way that Verma talks about, well, we got to remember the rest of the union. Now, I don't think anybody would disagree with that, but it seems like he's trying to play on something else that seems to me to be pretty divisive and negative. The other is, I would say, is that there's something seems to be going on at UPS that I think the union doesn't seem to be fully cognizant of, which is that the message coming from the new CEO, Carol Tomei, is that we want a better corporation, we don't want a bigger one. And so they just spun off UPS Freight, which is now T-Force, still a Teamster company, but clearly it's a message that UPS, while it's a fabulously profitable company, this is not a company in crisis, let's be clear about that. Is it going to be the big job creator that it was for 40 years for the Teamsters, when so much of what used to be in freight has largely disappeared? So what do people think of some of that stuff? I mean, what Verma's up to, the changing nature of UPS, its relationship to the Teamsters. Where is this going?
Can I go first, Tom?
Go ahead, Tim.
What most people don't know, and at least I think most people know about, and this was part of my campaign when I ran 5 years ago, is that UPS has a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, and a 15-year plan. They know exactly what they want to be doing 10 years from now, okay? They have a group in Atlanta called the PRISM Group. It's not spoken about. In fact, I'm the only one that I've ever heard talk about it. It's a think tank of scientists, economists, ergonomics, people that are given assignments. And they walk in there and they say, okay, you three, tell us what UPS is going to look like in 8 years with a 30% driverless feeder department, automated trucks. You go look at that. Then they took another 5 people and they said, okay, while Donald Trump was in office, what will UPS look like in the States if right to work becomes a national rule? And they would go and theorize that. And they're constantly thinking to the future and they have a plan. We at the Teamsters, we plan for what we're having for lunch today, where there's no forward thinking. I mean, someone actually mentioned that we need a plan. And it's true, we can't fight with 1950 tactics in 2021. Strike. Okay. I was part of the biggest strike I think we've ever had in 1997. It was, it was a glorious time. I was working in Washington. Everybody wanted to be a Teamster. The phone was ringing off the hook because we actually did something. But we've got to think to the future. This new CEO, Yeah, they're looking, my opinion, they're looking to spin off departments. They spin off UPS Freight at a loss.
Right.
Now, what's the next? Package? Do they want to sell that to Prime? I don't know. But they have a plan, and we need to have a plan, and we need to think outside the box. Sorry, Tom, go ahead.
No, it just on UPS in general. I mean, it's so popular for candidates to talk tough all the time, and I think in this regard, I have a problem with the O'Brien ticket because there's a lot of tough talk in regard to UPS, but when I look at the candidates, for example, farther down the ticket, I see Mark Davidson, who actually has led the Vote Yes campaign in the last 3 UPS contracts in the Northwest. I see people like Rick Hicks, who, former UPS part-time supervisor who claimed the last contract, I don't know what his exact language was, but it's something like the best ever, or he was proud to present it because it was such a fine deal. So you have these folks. In the case with Mark Davidson, I mean, he has literally led the Vote Yes campaigns in the last 3 contracts. And now he's running on the O'Brien ticket. I just find that hypocrisy breathtaking. I know it's not the only situation like that, but to me, that's just, I just don't see how you can take the tough talk seriously. When you've built your slate around the leaders of the Vote Yes. At the same time, I look at Verma on UPS, and it sounds like he's making the case that everything's fine. Almost as if he's running for another term of Hoffa's administration and on UPS. Now, he talks about white paper agreements. And Joe, I think part of that is just in how these candidates look at how they're going to get elected. I really think it boils down to that. In order to win an election in the Teamsters Union, you need access to members. You need access. You need to be able to get your message out. The debate tonight, I know that reformers, we've always argued for these debates, but let's face it, not that many people that are going to see this debate. So it's one way to get the information out, but there are very few ways to do that. And for a candidate like Verma to focus on white paper agreements, it's because he is depending on the structure of the union, the local unions with white paper agreements to do his campaigning. That's where his campaign is going to come from. And it looks stealthy when it's done that way. And I've experienced a few of those on the opposing side of that. And I know how that works. They use the structure of the union in those white paper agreements because people don't realize, they think of the Teamsters as UPS with 250, 300,000 members, but the majority of Teamster contracts are small. When I was head of the warehouse division, we had 40,000 contracts. Now, many of those were 2 and 5 and 6 and 10 person units and so forth. They're relying on their stewards. They're relying on their business agents to suggest to them who should vote how. And I think that kind of focus on white paper and saying, hey, this isn't all UPS, I think that's about getting elected in many respects. But this dynamic between these two, about one that seems to think everything's cool, everything's good, and we're like another term of the Hoffa administration. That's a losing argument to me. But at the same time, the tough talk may not be backed up by tough action.
What, I don't know if a lot of people ever considered this, but white paper, well, first off, for anybody watching who doesn't know what white paper contracts are, because I didn't for the first 4 or 5 years I was in the union, it's local factories, local units that are just within, they negotiate, their business agents negotiate their contracts. Their local presidents negotiate their contracts. The IBT has nothing, has no impact on their lives whatsoever, other than to set the dues schedule. They don't get involved in their contracts. It's just, they don't go to national panels. So when you get a factory like you got Leadham's Haymarket there, and he's got 20 employers, he goes out and says, hey, Tim Sylvester's running for president. When you get your ballot, I want you to vote for him. They do. And it's worked for Hoffa for the last 23 years. So don't underestimate the white paper contract campaign.
Richard, I don't know if you're out of your tunnel, but if you are, I'd love to hear what you think on this.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Leadham with, you talk tough about UPS. A lot of candidates who were behind, vote yes, not just to the 22-4, but to, a lot of these things. 2013 as well, and 2018. I agree. So, our members are like, yo, man, you are a part of the reason why I don't want to participate, because you're telling me one thing, but your team has been selling me out for years. So who do I believe? Who do I trust? Like you said, Mr. Leadham, you listen to Mr. Verman tonight, it sounds like you said, he may be running with, Hoffa again. But on the other side, you look at the I slate, they got a lot of those guys who've been selling out people for a decade. So as a member, who do you look to? Who do you trust? What do you do? But one of the things that I will say that I really enjoyed was that, the message was, from Verma was, hey, listen, do your homework, do your research, and I would encourage everybody to listen to this. Do your homework, do your research. The main thing is the vote, because regardless of who wins, if the members don't participate, everybody loses. Everybody. So everybody needs to get involved in this thing. I mean, I say this, I would rather have 1 million people vote and my candidate of choice lose than to have my candidate of choice win and only have about 150,000 people vote, because there's no power there. And if we're going to organize Amazon and fight UPS and these other giant behemoths, then we're going to have the members' participation. This can't be rah, rah, sis, boom, bah. It's going to have to be boots on the ground. It's going to have to be job action. It's going to have to be pickets. It's going to have to be, everything that in our arsenal. But it's going to be tough because, like you said, Mr. Leadham, if you've been selling me out for 10 years, now you're telling me that you're going to be my savior. I got a problem with that. How can I trust you with that?
So on this, the last election in 2016, only about 15% of Teamster members voted. It was about 200,000 Teamsters participated in the election, but about 1.4, 1.3 million members in total. Tim, you'd mentioned that there's a lot of people under white paper contracts to whom the IBT doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, whatever happens there, it's on a different planet. How do Teamsters get involved in these things? What drives people to vote?
Just quick fact check. In 1996, I was at the vote count, and 510,000 members voted back then. That was the first election between Kerry and Hoffa. So, I mean, it's just amazing me. I'm going to give you a simple answer. You want to get members involved, you want to get them to vote, you have to give them a sense of hope. Because most members feel their ballot is a waste of time and nothing's going to change. You have to give them a sense of hope and that it's actually going to make a difference. And I don't see a difference being made in this election between either of these candidates, to tell you the truth. I mean, there are some good people on both slates, but what people have failed to realize here, and Tom Leadham's the one who taught me this, it's the top spot that counts. Top spot and the second spot. Other than that, doesn't matter who your at-larges are, who your VPs are, it doesn't. It's the top spot that matters. So you need to have someone at the top that's who's real and the members believe. And I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I think in terms of the decision making, that's very true. All you have to do is read the Constitution, and I would suggest every Teamster member read the Constitution, and you'll see where the power is in the organization. And that's the way it is. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying that that is it. And this is a critical election, no doubt about it. There's no reform slate in this election. I'm used to seeing a reform slate in Teamster elections, and there's no reform slate this time. And that I think is really unfortunate.
You mean, Tom, with the Hoffa forces split in half running against each other, it would have been a good time to have a reform slate? Is that what you're saying?
Might have been the best time.
Well, can I follow up on that with another question? Because
Hold on one sec. Let's let Richard get in there. and
Oh,
then
Richard,
ask-
go ahead, man. Yeah.
No, hey, listen, I agree. This has been a very, very difficult election because, like Tim says, you have some really, really good people on both sides. But like he also says, the top two spots that count. The top spot makes all the decisions. They give out the appointments and this, that, and the other. And I'm gonna be honest, man. I don't want someone who I can't trust at that top position. I can't look my members in their face and say, hey, vote for this person, even though you're losing thousands and thousands of dollars in salary and I can't do that. I can't. I don't feel comfortable saying to anybody that to vote for, certain people. I just can't do it. And this is going to be one of those things where our members really going to have to do some research. The local leaders are going to have to really, just be truthful and honest with our members and tell them the truth. Listen, this is going to be a very difficult election, and God help us all. God help us all in this one.
Just one thing I wanted to say, I forgot. I've heard a lot of people say, well, I don't like the leader of either slate, and I don't, but at least we'll have a seat at the table. Well, I have to tell you, the seat at the table that you're going to have is at the children's table in the other room. Because if you're not sitting at the top of that table in the IBT, doesn't matter who you have there. Go ahead, Joe.
I just wanted to throw out to people that, the point about there being no clear reform slate in this election. And, just to kind of pull back the lens a little bit and say, 40 years or a little bit more than 40 years after the founding of Teamsters for a Democratic Union, 30-ish years after the first election of Ron Carey, here we are. How did we get here? Where do we go from here? How come reform didn't take root in the Teamsters?
Well, I think there is a sense among some that there are reform candidates, on the Oz slate. That was the whole idea of TDU's involvement and endorsement. And let me say up front, I have a long history with Teamsters for a Democratic Union. And I'm very proud of my relationship with TDU and the elections that I've been involved in where I had TDU's support. I believe TDU is responsible for the fact that we have democratic elections in the Teamsters Union, and also the fight to keep them alive. And I'm proud that I was a part of that, the effort to keep these elections alive. When I look at these slates, though, and people say, well, this is the reform slate, this is the TDU and so forth. There's essentially 5 candidates that proudly carry a TDU moniker, and 2 of them, I believe, of the candidates will be in non-voting positions. So we've got a board, 27 positions, 5 I believe they are reformers, but that is just, it's so difficult to make anything happen when you have actually 3 seats, on a 25-person board. So I really wonder what did happen. I'm not sure. But it's going to be interesting because I frankly believe that either of these slates that win, whoever wins, there is a need for an organization like TDU. There is a need for accountability to these officers. There is a need to shine some light on what happens in the Marble Palace, where the money goes. When we're talking about Amazon, I think members need to be pushing these officers to make the sacrifices that they're going to have to make, because they need to readjust the way money is spent at the IBT if we're serious about organizing Amazon. And we damn well better be serious about it. There's no bigger threat. I've worked with Amazon workers for the last several years, and I'll tell you right now in this country, the organization that's doing Amazon organizing is DSA. DSA is doing more organizing it with Amazon than the Teamsters are, and we need to turn that around.
Yeah, Amazon is a big threat, and the team's largest employer, UPS, they know it. I remember we were at a panel, I believe in April, and one of the labor managers for the company, and I did a presentation on Amazon.
Look, we kind of lost you there.
Is that UPS, they need our help. The Teamsters help. They kept talking about wages and benefits and this, that, and the other. And it was funny because I'm thinking, as I'm sitting there listening to the labor manager put on his display, that they're concerned about wages and benefits, but they won't take care of their own people who are already there, wages and benefits. But they want us to worry about, organizing Amazon and worry about their wages and benefits, which we should, but they should take care of their own people that same way. Well, UPS know there's a problem. The Teamsters know there's a problem. But again, I don't know who has the right plan. But again, it's something that Mr. Verma said that, that may become key, is that you want to make sure that your leadership reflects the people that you're trying to organize. And I think that is very, very important, very important.
Woof. It's kind of a tough one to follow, you guys. Well, I'll ask a provocative question. I mean, Tom, you said we need a TDU kind of organization, no matter who wins. What do we make of TDU in that light? I'm a TDU member. I have been my entire time. I've been a Teamster. I've learned more things from TDU than probably anybody, although I have to admit to being majorly disappointed by TDU's alliance in this slate. Is Teamster reform synonymous with TDU? Is that something else? I wonder what you all think on that.
Well, look, historically, as I've said, I'm a big fan of TDU. I have learned a lot from TDU members and so forth. It's going to be hard, though, for TDU, having supported O'Brien, to hold O'Brien accountable. I think it's going to be difficult if, in fact, he's elected. I think it's critical that they do. But I think, there's just going to be some credibility issues in the short term, at the very least. I think there's going to be credibility issues. But it's my hope that there has to be some kind of organized opposition You cannot change the Teamsters from outside. You've got to do it from within. And that takes organization. And right now, TDU is that organization. They have the breadth, membership in all aspects of the union, all industries in the union, and so forth. So I think we have to count on a strong TDU. I think it's going to be. I don't know how it's going to turn out though. As strong as they've been in support of O'Brien, and I think it's obvious if you look at the rap sheet that there's going to have to be an organization to hold him accountable if in fact he's elected. And the same is true with Verma. Although Verma, he's said it, he's never been investigated, he's never been charged. That's true. I mean, I've never thought of him as corrupt. I may have thought of him as weak from time to time, but.
Well, I know that the EEOC ruled against his local in the case of a bunch of Somali workers that he represented, that the union was discriminatory in their representation. So not a charge against him formally, but something that, kind of tars his reputation a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that.
Yeah, with the relationship with TDU, I think TDU is a good organization. I think that if Mr. O'Brien is successful, is going to be because of TDU. Listen, TDU has a very good infrastructure of mobilization and education members. You got to give it credit where credit is due. And ironically, I mean, I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in if it wasn't for TDU or Sean O'Brien, because, when I was coming up, you listen to TDU and you listen to other reform groups. Hey, listen, we got to make sure that people like O'Brien, do not become general president, and we fought against that. And TDU was behind that. Now it's, they're going, I don't want to say going with the enemy. It's just that, they decided to endorse him. But I got a lot of love for TDU. No love lost. I'm not a member of TDU. Like I said, they have helped me, and I respect them for that. And ironically, like I just said, if it wasn't for people like O'Brien and an organization like TDU, I wouldn't be in the position that I am in today, because fighting against people like O'Brien, but with the help of TDU and their resources of education and mobilization, I don't know what happened. We still do need an organization like that for checks and balances in the Teamsters, as you can see. I don't know if they will be able to do the same thing they have been doing when it comes to holding people accountable. Because how can you hold O'Brien accountable when you endorse them and put your resources behind them? I don't know if you can do that.
There lies the problem. There lies the problem. And I think I agree with Andy, and I think you're saying the same thing, Richard. I believe in TDU. I'm just very disappointed at its current direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why I never became a member. I love those guys, man. Again, like I said, they helped me out tremendously. My local, tremendously. But politically, man, I just don't understand. I just don't get it. I don't understand how we can support someone who has done so much damage to our organization. Members have lost behind this guy. And I just don't understand it. I just don't get it. I don't get it.
Well, I'm going to concur. I never would have won my local election without the help of TDU. Wouldn't have happened. Their organization was great. I don't have a clue what they're thinking now. I can't put it any simpler than that. they endorsed this slate 2.5 years ago without even, to my knowledge, trying to put together a reform slate. I, like Richard, have never been a member. I don't have a clue what they decided to do with the steering committee, but it seems contrary to everything they've ever stood for, to my knowledge. So, but they'll say I'm bitter, so I don't know what to tell you.
Can I throw out a question for the panelists? And we're coming up to the 1 hour mark, so you should let us know if you guys feel like continuing or not. Just to throw out something that's been on my mind, and I think Richard's tried to address some of this with his dialogue with Chris Silvera, is that, last year's kind of national uprising following the murder of George Floyd kind of showed that there's millions of young people, Black, Latino, as well as white and Asian, that clearly are concerned about huge issues around racial and social justice in this country. And far too few times is that with, the organized trade union movement. And, the Teamsters is such a diverse union of who it represents and geographically and industries. It should at least be a repository of some of that sentiment. And I was just kind of wondering what people think about what can be done to bring this generation of people into the Teamsters and make them the new leadership. I mean, I know it's a huge question, but I think it's something that's on a lot of people's minds,
Let me add something to that. I talked about the PRISM group earlier at UPS. They actually have done studies, ergonomic demographics of which people to hire in certain areas. They've gone out and studied that. And I got that from a human resource guy who actually made a comment to me that he had just gotten an email and he was now allowed to hire outside this ethnic group that he'd been directed to hire. So what they do is they study, where are you, Andy? Madison, Wisconsin? They'll go into Madison, Wisconsin, and they'll study who's there. And they'll study the company, and they'll try to find what group would be most beneficial to hire for the company. And you see the change in the demographics. So what you're saying on one point is, how do we bring these people into the union, which is a fantastic idea. What I'm saying is the companies are using it against you too. When I talked about the right to work under Trump, that was part of their study. What ethnic group is best in Madison, Wisconsin to hire, that if right to work goes through, will be most likely to quit the union or not join the union in the first place. So, I mean, it's a double-edged sword out there, but my local, we've got some dynamic people that are non-white, that are, they're the future of the local. So.
I don't know. I think the polling shows a lot of favorability toward unions right now. I just think that the workers, almost on an individual basis, have to feel that the organization that they're joining is fighting for them, is always fighting for them, always has their back. They have to know that those people, those leaders, they're not making, they're not getting rich off dues money. They want to believe that those workers live like they do, or at least understand how they live. We pay our leaders more than the workers that they represent. That's not going to change, but at least these salaries for officers ought to be somewhere in line with, with the people they represent. I know my local, when I ran for office, 1986 was the first time. We made it so that our pension contributions, our salaries, our wages, they were all in line with the membership, and we continued that on. And I'm living quite comfortably now on my Western Conference of Teamsters retirement, which was the same contribution that the members got. And I was surprised that there wasn't more discussion on pension in that debate, by the way. Not just on, throwing charges back forth about, who did, about how we build better pensions for our members, how we convince members that when they get into contract negotiations, a key economic piece that we have to push hard up front is the pension contribution, not just focus on wages and so forth. Our members need to know how the contract works, that when we say you get full MOB, full healthcare coverage, they need to know what that's worth, what that costs, what part of the package that is. And in bargaining, they may want to, move some things around to strengthen pensions and so forth. I think that they have a right to do that. I believe that. And that's why I've always believed in bargaining committees, full-blown bargaining committees from day one. It just makes sense. So not enough discussion on pension, clearly, and how we build our pensions stronger and we build our benefits better, and we can do these things. But in order to attract people, people want to be part of something that they can believe in. They want to be part of something that is fighting for them. And I think, the more we can instill that in workers by example, we have to earn their trust. It's not going to be, handed out when they sign an application to join the union.
Mr. Hooker, do you want to give a remark, and then we'll do some closers?
Yeah, I think you have to have what I like to call is a representation relationship with your members. Like you guys talked about, they need to know that you come from the same place. You've been working with them for years. Making, like you said, Mr. Leadham, you're not trying to get rich off of them. They see you, not just around election time or when you drive campaigns or this campaign or this campaign or this contract. You have to have that relationship with your members so you can build that trust. And you also got to be transparent with them. They need to know pretty much everything that goes on with their house, with their money, because it's their house, it's their money. It doesn't belong to any of us. And I think once we start as leaders to really deposit that mind frame and that mindset into our members, then you'll start to see more and more of our diverse group want to become leaders, want to become involved, want to be more of a participant in what their dues give them. But it all starts with that relationship, representation relationship, I like to call it. You got to have that with your members.
I just want to add one thing. I agree with both of you, Tom and Richard. The fundamental thing you need to do with your members is you need to tell them the truth. You need to be upfront, honest with them. If there's a problem, you tell them there's a problem, because you pat them on the back and tell them everything's fine, and it's not. That's what happened in my local. We were told everything was fine, and I took over office, and on the way out the door, the president before me shook my hand and said, "Oh, by the way, your health fund's in arbitration next month." We were broke, and I had to go to my first general membership meeting, or my second one, and tell the members I was doubling their co-pays and I was switching this and I was doing all these sort of things. And Tom was a huge help that first year. I don't want to tell you my phone bill calling Oregon, but we told the members the truth. We showed them the issue, and within 2 years later, we had really fixed the problem. I took over. There was $6 million in the health fund, and when I left 6 years later, there was $75 million, and it's probably the best fund in the country. But you go to the members, you tell them the truth. We have a problem together. This is systemic in our whole country now. We have a problem, but we're going to blame you, and you're going to blame them, and we're going to blame you. But nobody wants to work on the problem. And it's kind of simple if you get the members involved and say, "This is what we have to do. Let's fix it." So you have to tell them the truth.
All right. So we've covered a whole bunch of stuff, and thank you guys immensely. I just want to give you guys a quick minute. If you got any last remarks, anything you want to pump, this is your time. So we'll go in seniority order. Mr. Leadham, would you like to start?
I always go first now. I don't know. No. Well, I want to mention, since Joe talked about this strike in Chicago, we also have a strike, Nabisco. eat Oreos. Whatever you do, don't eat Oreos. The bakers are on strike, but there's Teamsters involved in those distribution centers and in those bakeries. And those Teamsters are out honoring the bakers, and we need to keep them out. This company, Nabisco Mandalays, every time they come to the table, it said for another concession, record profits, trying to take away pension, two-tier healthcare. Don't eat Nabisco products. Do what you can to help with that strike. And thanks for inviting me for tonight.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Sylvester.
Well, I also thank you for inviting me to the panel. I go back to what I was saying before. The members need to be told the truth. And this upcoming election, you don't change who you are. And there are people, when you reach a certain age, what you've exhibited in your past of how you talk to people, how you handle situations, how you throw your weight around. I like using that word. You don't change. You don't all of a sudden say, "Oh, well, now that was then." I've always just been very dynamic, but now, now I'm okay. Sorry, not my opinion. So, thank you for having me, Richard.
All right.
Andy and Joe, and I appreciate you guys, Tim, Tom. Thank you guys for paving the way for guys like me and young guys coming up. We look up to you guys. You guys laid the foundation. I just want to give you guys much respect. You guys, again, without you guys, there will be no Richard Hooker Jr. if it wasn't for you guys. So I want to thank you guys for that. And to the membership, we just got to vote. Bottom line, whatever your candidate of choice, just vote. I don't want to be November 15th come and we got about 100,000 people voted and we all lose, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired of the Teamsters losing. This COVID-19 has showed us a lot of things. This country cannot operate without the worker. It cannot. And we have all the leverage and we have all the power. And if we don't use it, we're going to lose it, regardless of who's in office, regardless of who's at the Marble Palace. This is the members' union. It doesn't belong to O'Brien, doesn't belong to Verma, doesn't belong to Hooker, doesn't belong to anybody. It belongs to the members. But the only way that we get that is if our members participate and take it back from, the bullies of the world. We got to take it back. We can't allow the systemic problems that we have to fester. We can't allow these guys to continue to tell us what they're going to do. This is our union, and we need to take it back.
Beautifully said. All right. Well, thank you guys all so much. I mean, this was a real pleasure. All of you have been extremely inspirational, and I hope it's been helpful for everybody watching. Definitely do your homework, get out there and vote, but then most importantly, be active and organized. I mean, that's what it's all about. Joe, do you want to close this? He wasn't ready for that.
I gotta unmute myself for a second. I just want to say once again, thanks for everybody for coming. Obviously, there are 2 more debates coming up, and if people think it's worth getting together again and inviting a few more people, I'd love to do it. But let's take it as it comes on that one. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful night.
Good night.
Good night.